Steve. So what's your initial take on the spring game?
Start with the broadcast. I think a lot of people were a little bit put out that they really didn't cover the game quite as much as they made it more of a, people said, a talk show, which I think you have to do a blend of that. There were only about 600,000 viewers for the game, so I don't think the experiment hit maybe quite as well as they'd hoped it would have. Even Buckeye Nation didn't tune in to watch it, it seems. So I don't know if, 600 is probably better than whatever infomercial they were going to put on, I suppose. But, to me, the game itself was a great showcase for a lot of young players, freshmen and sophomores, to get an opportunity at Ohio Stadium to try and make some plays. We didn't see the frontline guys more than for 2 or 3 series early in the scrimmage. It was just kind of a cameo. I thought Emeka Buka kind of showed out a little bit to have 4 catches. It was kind of a wash between Will Howard and Devin Brown. They each had 2 possessions, and they both put up about the same number of yards, although one of Brown's possessions ended with a touchdown. Should be noted, he threw it to a walk-on and was playing against mostly freshmen and walk-ons when he did score that touchdown. But still, some people came out of it saying Brown outplayed Howard, and some people thought Howard still has just the tiniest leg up on Brown. But on the whole, I thought just a great day. It didn't appear that anybody got too banged up as a result of it, which is obviously an important thing to have full health. I think the one big concern health-wise is Brandon Ennis, the wide receiver, and they're going to need him. I think the young receivers struggled getting separation against veteran defensive backs in this game, and the Ohio State offensive line still not where it needs to be. They gave up 6 sacks and 70 called pass plays. That's not a good ratio going into the season, obviously.
Your take, Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of Steve's points. So, I'll try not to repeat them, but I'll get on a downhill roll and probably will repeat a couple. But it was to the viewership numbers, 600,000, not great numbers. It didn't beat a couple of UFL games in terms of numbers, and they were in different slots. So, it's not always going to be apples to apples, but yeah, probably better than the Rotel infomercial that would have aired in that slot anyway. We all went in wanting to see separation from the quarterbacks, and I don't know if I necessarily saw anything to where I would be like, okay, this guy is, standing tall amongst the rest of the room. I think that we saw a lot of similarities. It's not the type of setup that's going to benefit somebody who's a runner like Will Howard, or even moving down the depth chart to like an Aaron Nolan. We did see a nice Aaron Nolan, run during the event. It was going to be a difficult battle for the wide receivers, regardless if you were a senior or a freshman going against that secondary. Emeka Buka made a fantastic, spear and snag on the visitor sideline to be able to pull the ball in at one point, which was, nice to see. The offensive line, I think that is going to be the big question. I walked out of the game, the scrimmage, not as concerned. Then I went back and I watched it, and I'm like, all right, maybe I am a little bit more concerned. And now we're starting to hear the potential of Ohio State looking at somebody in the portal, potentially. I mean, I'm not necessarily dialed in on names, but I always felt that was going to be a big tell if Ohio State was going to go and look in the portal at offensive linemen. And, it appears that may be the case. So, I think that there's room to grow there. But overall, we all want to go into a spring game expecting that we're going to see something that's going to look like week 7 of the season, fine-tuned, smooth, up and down action. And it's the 15th scrimmage of spring practice. And you have to kind of remind yourselves of that, even though I think we all fall prey to it.
How much do we give some leeway to Julian Sayin in particular for making a couple throws that the one interception, you check off on interceptions. Okay, was that a bad decision? Was it a bad throw? Was it a late throw? Oh, well, it was all 3. And we've got, he shouldn't have thrown it there. He threw it behind the guy and he threw it late. And then the other one was not too pretty as well on the other end of the field. So these young quarterbacks, Sayan in particular, I'll pick on because he looked to be most affected by the wind. Right before that, he threw a ball into the turf, trying to throw the ball across the field as well. You're on mute, Steve.
My apology. I think that Sayan pushed his way into the discussion to try and start at some point this season. I don't think he's going to start the first game, but I think he did very well throughout the 15 practices, and it was evident when he was. Let's go back to the manner of thinking here. They had the first team go out there with Will Howard. Then they put the second team offensive line and offense out there with Lincoln Keenholz. And that was done so they could bring the first team back with Devin Brown for the third series. And then Julian Sayin finally appeared for the fourth series. And then they just kind of rotated from that point on. And whereas the two veterans, Brown and Howard, were done at halftime, Sayin, I think Keenholz maybe, and certainly Aaron Noland, he played, exclusively in the second half. It tells you kind of the pecking order. For Sayin, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and I think that's what everybody has noticed. He is 6'1", 203 pounds. When they did the picture of them taking the black stripe off of him, Will Howard and Devin Brown towered over him. So I kind of want to say, okay, Baker Mayfield, a smaller guy, but he still can get results. What I came away with this from is he needs to do whatever he needs to do before the preseason starts to get bigger and stronger and improve his arm strength just a little bit. A windy day really played havoc with him. And the interception, I think he was thrown from the left hash, trying to throw it late back and did not quite get it there. And I think Jalen McClain made the easy interception on that ball to return it on that. So, again, the coaches only know what they saw for 15 practices. If they think Julian Sain's the best guy based on the 15 practices, then so be it. Whatever. But I think what we saw in the spring game illustrates, again, the importance of experience. The two older guys did not throw a pick. The three younger guys combined for 4 interceptions. Now, granted, Aaron Noland threw one up for grabs on the last play of the game, just trying to make something happen. I mean, the clock had expired. So throwing an interception there is not that big a deal. And I think what we come back to again was something either Brady Quinn or Urban Meyer said on the broadcast, that as they watched the game live in the stadium, nobody is open. The secondary, even the backups with Calvin Simpson-Hunt and Jermaine Matthews and everybody else, they were blanketing the receivers. So I think the young receivers, your Carnell Tate, your Jeremiah Smith, Ennis when he's healthy, Bryson Rogers, all these guys need to get back in the lab, fine-tune route running, getting in and out of breaks, high-pointing the football. Brian Hartline's going to have them work on the little things that it takes to make plays against a great secondary. And obviously, wonderful to illustrate that this is a great secondary finally after about 4 or 5 years in the wilderness. So that's kind of my overall on that.
Anything additional, Kevin, on the quarterback play?
I mean, I think it's a situation of where you go in and you go through 15 practices and, your first couple are just, making sure, left from left and right from right and everything else. And you have your scrimmages and you have your competition. But once you get into Ohio Stadium to go through a real full scrimmage, on Friday leading into the spring game, they did stuff in the stadium, but it was some positional work. There was some 7 on, some 11 on, but you turn the lights on and everything else. And I think, it gets people amped. And I think that the defense did a good job. I mean, right, the interceptions, some of them were just not great throws. I mean, as Steve had highlighted, they just weren't great throws, great decisions, whatever. But I'm focused more on the secondary, really blanketing guys. I mean, Jeremiah Smith was largely taken out of play. There was a play that Davison Igbinosin locked him up. There was another play where I believe it was it Jermaine Matthews locked him up. They were not going to let a young buck come in there and beat them. And I think that everybody was probably just given a little extra in that game. And I think that when you sit there and you look at spring practice, where the strength of the team is at this moment in terms of experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it was always going to be tilted a little bit toward the defense. The good news is you have a ton of tape. And while the coaches can't work directly with the players on the field, there's all sorts of time to go over film and all of that stuff. And there will be a lot of good learning experiences. I'd be more concerned if Ohio State came out and was executing really well in the spring game, like across the board. And that would have been more of a case of, is it a low ceiling for this team? But I think that there's a high ceiling. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that can be gone through coaching and everything else that will carry all the way through spring, through fall practice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these guys will be good to go when the season opens against Akron.
Now, the team up north, are they aware of those rules about not being involved with the players during this period of time going into the summer?
They better be. They're on probation for 3 years, so they can't. They got to keep their nose clean for 3 years. So
they got to keep their nose clean. They have another pending investigation. I mean,
they're running out of nostrils.
Well, it's I made some comments on social yesterday and summarily tried to get slapped down by some Michigan fans. So I'm just going to chill today. I'm going to unless I'm egged on, and then there are no promises.
It's all good. You know,
Go ahead.
I look at it that they're in for a rude awakening. I mean, it just feels like things are starting to spiral out of control up there with everything. Denard Robinson with a DUI now. That's 2 DUIs this offseason. Plus, the first NCAA shoe has dropped, and now we all await the second NCAA shoe to drop theoretically within the next month or two, you would hope, to get some clarity. I don't think they're going to be eligible for the Big Ten championship, and I don't think it would matter. I think they're going 7-5, 8-4 this year, and they're in for a rude awakening. I think it's they had their moment, and we all knew that this moment was going to come where they're going to pay for it. And it's been a mass exodus up there. Now Will Johnson wants out, and that'll just tell you that people just don't see it up there, for 2024. So for them to have an over under of 9.5 wins or whatever it is just absurd to me.
Load up. I've already put maybe a couple of units on that one on the under.
Yeah, no doubt.
So a couple other notes from the broadcast, both pertaining to Urban Meyer. First of all, Ohio State fans have to respect that he still does not utter the M word through an entire broadcast of speaking of that team, and we'll test him again this week. I'm guessing he's going to go to Ann Arbor and be one of the analysts in the booth.
Hard to say. Maybe he won't. Maybe they'll keep him off that one, because if you can't say the word Michigan, how do you do a Michigan game? I don't know.
Well, he talks about them every week. It's the Wolverines. It's the team up north. That's what it is.
Yeah, but that'll piss off a lot of people. Granted, if their numbers are similar and it's only 600K tuning in or whatever, you're diehards largely, and those that are curious. I mean, I was shocked last night when I was watching something on BTN to find out USC spring game is going to be on BTN already.
I thought it was going to be on Pac-12.
I thought so too.
Well, maybe it's being simulcast. It is on 3:00 Eastern Saturday on BTN, because the bar I was at had college softball on BTN, and they promoted a couple of times.
Okay. I wonder if they put Charles Woodson in that spot in place of Urban Meyer. That would just make more sense, to have a Michigan guy doing the game, because it's more of a grab ass telecast anyway, of them sitting around yucking it up, as opposed to a real X's and O's type thing. And grab ass is more kind of what Charles Woodson would be there for. So
I thought that made sense too. I think that Charles is a little more partisan toward his team, but the thing is that he is not annoying about it the way that Dez is over on the
Yeah.
four-letter network. Charles, there's no doubt in anybody's mind who he's pulling for or whatever, but he bases some of his wild ass comments with at least a semblance of fact or whatever. Whereas Dez does. Dez is just going to Dez.
Dez gone Dez.
Yeah, that's my experience with those two as well. That's well stated, and I think that's on point there. Yeah, again, Urban Meyer. Anyway, I was searching all over the place to follow up on the USC deal because we were going wild the other night. So the Pac-12 network is airing all of the former Pac-12 because it's obviously the spring semester of the current calendar year. And so we had a bit of a tirade the other night on the USC show concerning that not being picked up by the Big Ten network and probably contractually tied down to the Pac-12 network. But Kevin's telling us the Big Ten network. There we go with USC this Saturday. That will follow the Michigan game on Fox.
Yeah, Fox has a hand, I think, in both networks, don't they? So they could just dictate, it's going to be on both or whatever. So,
So I don't remember what the makeup of Pac-12 was. I mean, Larry Scott had all sorts of weird ideas of how he wanted to handle distribution rights and everything else. I don't know what the ownership points are in the soon-to-be defunct Pac-12 network.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who's like a producer over there, but I haven't reached out to him to ask. I just don't want to be like, hey, so you're going to be out of a job here soon. That's just never the way you want to lead a conversation.
The final pitch of the Pac-12 baseball tournament has been made. It is a wrap. So there you go.
Yeah, I just found that strange. Not that they would not want to cling onto any valuable programming in the least bit that they have, but that they would be airing all the departed teams' spring games is a bit odd. But again, they're trying to salvage a buck or two as they call it quits. The other thing that Urban Meyer did during the game was he presented a list of tangible and intangible qualities of championship teams. I don't know if you guys caught this.
I saw that. I didn't take note of it, but I saw it. Yeah,
we're talking about separating good from great. The only item on the list, on the tangible list, that Ohio State would be in question, in my opinion, was offensive line. But other than that, it all lines up for them. Now you go to the intangible list and you start talking about things that we could debate and argue and conjecture about all day in regards to, do they have the leadership? Do they have the toughness? Do they have the elite coaching staff? That would be the easiest to quantify. But again, I don't know if you guys caught that. I thought it was, when we talk about the presentation of a spring game and whether it should be more game or more television show presenting the team, I like the presentation of the team, especially if I'm a little less familiar with the team. If I'm watching the Clemson spring game, I want to hear the breakdown of the positions, the players, the program. And I thought they did a decent job of doing that. And I could listen to Urban Meyer talk football for a couple hours, and that would be better time spent than knowing that it's 3rd and 6 at the 17-yard line.
Well, from about the 45-minute mark of the broadcast on, if you knew who any of the players were who were on the field, then you are an expert on Ohio State football, because late first half on, it was mostly freshmen, sophomores, and walk-ons. So, it really, what was taking place on the field was in a lot of ways immaterial. Great for those kids and their parents and their high school and so on and so forth. And some of them, the 2 freshman running backs, Sam Williams-Dixon, he was brought in kind of in the shadow of James Peoples, and Sam Williams-Dixon had a great day. He ran for 75 yards, and James Peoples the highly touted running back from Texas. He came in, he ran for, I think, 10 times for 36 yards. He didn't quite get the same amount of traction that Sam Williams-Dixon got, but still great to see those guys each get 10, 15 carries in their first time to play with the lights on there at the stadium. That's going to benefit them tremendously. Having said that, I'm already on record as saying, okay, you lost Dallin Hayden. You got to go replace Dallin Hayden in the portal with somebody who will accept the role as the third string running back on one of the 2 or 3 best teams in college football. Because in a 16-game season, Henderson's going to get chewed up and spit out. Judkins is going to get chewed up and spit out. And you're going to need, at some moment, you're going to need a veteran guy, number 3 guy, to come in there and make plays. And it's just fact of the matter. And to rely on a freshman in a high leverage situation, I think, is going to be difficult. TC Caffey, the walk-on, number 26 or 28, he did a great job getting in there, catching passes and running the ball too. He's back from injury. He's 215 pounds. There's people on our message board that say they need to put that guy on scholarship and maybe not worry about going out and getting a running back. But I think there is some value in kicking the tires on a transfer portal running back. And certainly, to my way of thinking, you've got to add an offensive lineman who will at least compete with the guys you have for us, if not a frontline offensive lineman to take a starting role. And then if it's a tackle, you put Fryer at guard. If it's a guard, you put Fryer at tackle, and go chase championship trophies, because I'm not sure you're going to get there with the guys you have right now.
So to put a second wrap up on not just the spring game, but all of spring football, and of course the spring game's the biggest indicator, but you guys being privy to much more than that, if you put all of spring together, Steve, I'll start with you. Do you think anyone really helped themselves this spring?
Oh, yeah. I was asked in my chat either this week or the week before for my list of guys who probably helped themselves. And, I grabbed the roster and I was like, yeah, this guy and this guy. Kyon Grays is a wide receiver who probably stepped up a little bit. Certainly Bryson Rogers, a wide receiver who was in the transfer portal very briefly. He'll be a sophomore this coming year. I think he helped himself. Jelani Thurman is going to rep at tight end, I think. Again, with all these young wide receivers like Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, and certainly when Mylan Graham arrives in the summer, they're going to have to really drill down on the finer points of wide receiver play, because they're going to get exposed in practice every day if they don't, because that secondary is awesome. Sam Williams-Dixon, not sure what he did over the 15 days of spring ball, but man, his spring game was dynamite. I thought he ran with authority, and that's not something that I think a lot of people were thinking with him. They looked at him as more the playmaker type guy, open field, but I thought he did great. TC Caffey coming back from injury, I thought was really good. Going on down, I would have thought Luke Montgomery, but over the last week, it seems his hold on the right guard position has lessened. And he was tossed aside for a sack in the spring game. I forget which of the many sacks that was, but I didn't feel like Hinsman at guard was the answer. I didn't feel like Montgomery at guard was the answer. Tegra Bola gave up a sack coming off the edge one time. I forget who had that. I had it all written down, but don't have it in front of me. But, I don't know that they've got the definitive answer to that position just yet. So need to see some more there. G. Scott Jr. looks like he's the guy at tight end. Flipping over to defense. Aaron Scott Jr. played well in the spring game, true freshman out of Springfield, really highly touted. I think 11 Warriors, our guys over there, said that Aaron Scott played the most snaps of anybody in the spring game. So that's kind of an interesting thing. True freshman, got to play probably the entire second half, obviously. This secondary, it looks like it's set with Hancock and Denzel Burke and Igbinosun, with Hancock being the nickel back, it appears, and then Ransom when he comes back from injury, and Caleb Downs, the Alabama transfer, locked in. Good spring for Mitchell Melton at defensive end. Arvell Reese took a few steps at linebacker. It seemed like Matthews and Simpson Hunt, pretty good backups at corner. Going on down, Gabe Powers made some inroads, I thought, at linebacker at times. And then defensive line, there were a lot of young guys who really stepped up. Jason Moore had a sack and contributed on another sack in this game. He is a sophomore. Edric Houston had a sack in this game, true freshman. And one more guy I'm looking for. If I can find him. Hero Canoe, I thought, the light bulb has gone on for Hero Canoe in his third year. He's coming on. Will Smith Jr., he played pretty well in the Student Appreciation Day scrimmage. Didn't see much of him on spring game. He's an undersized defensive tackle, only 288 pounds, so maybe he'll try and pack on a few more pounds. But those are all guys, and I'm sure I'm missing some of the, next, not starters, but guys who could be starting by 2025 or perhaps midseason in 2024 if something, were to happen to the guy in front of him.
So, Kevin, I guess the question for you is who regressed in this? No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, I don't have a roster next to me
the
right
entire
now.
roster there. Now there's a thumbnail for everyone to clip off to listen to a footnote on any what you may term as an obscure or fringe player on the Ohio State roster. There you go. Good stuff right there. So anyone that stood out to you in regards to, again, not just the spring game, Kevin, but in the totality of spring.
Well, I mean, at risk of repeating guys that Steve mentioned, because he mentioned them all, I mean, I thought I saw some flashes from Edric Houston as a true freshman coming in and making some plays. I liked what I saw out of Mitchell Melton as spring progressed. I think that, there's so many, we're talking about guys that really kind of helped themselves. And I think I really focus on the guys that I already knew had arrived in a lot of ways, because those are the ones that you're going to have to be most familiar with as you're going on. I mean, on the offensive side, I think Bryson Rogers really did a lot of good things to be mentioned right there in the mix. Could he be the number 5 receiver? I mean, he has obviously an advantage over Mylan Graham, who is not enrolled yet, but Mylan Graham, super talented. Not that Bryson Rogers isn't, but it's going to take some work to kind of hold Mylan Graham off. I really kind of had hoped to see more out of the tight end position during the practices. They always seem to be in the far corner, and I never really got an opportunity to see a lot of them. It was kind of an up and down spring for Will Kasmerick. I think that it's starting to come on for him at this point. Obviously, everybody's really excited about Jelani Thurman and what they're going to see there. Jelani had a touchdown grab on the Friday practice in the near corner of the end zone. That was pretty nice, where he kind of went out and was able to bring it in.